Everyone waits for the perfect moment to begin, a spark of motivation, a wave of inspiration, a burst of energy, but that moment rarely comes. Motivation is like the wind, it changes direction without warning. One day it lifts you high, the next it disappears, leaving you stranded. The truth is, you don't need motivation to move forward, you need consistency. Because consistency doesn't ask how you feel, it simply asks, will you show up today? And those who keep showing up regardless of how they feel are the ones who shape destiny. Motivation is like a spark, it burns fast and bright, then disappears into smoke. You cannot build a meaningful life on temporary emotion. Those who depend on motivation never stay long enough to see their work bear fruit. True growth begins when you stop chasing inspiration and start building habits that hold you steady when the excitement fades. Repetition, effort, and commitment, these are the pillars that shape mastery. When you rely on motivation, you move when you feel like it. When you rely on consistency, you move because it's who you are. Consistency is the foundation of strength. It doesn't matter how small your actions are, what matters is that you repeat them until they become a part of your nature. Every time you show up, even when you don't feel like it, you train your mind to rise above emotion. Success is not about doing something once with intensity, it's about doing it every day with purpose. Each drop of effort carves through resistance, slowly but surely building momentum that can't be stopped. Your feelings will deceive you. Some days you'll wake up ready to conquer the world, other days you'll feel empty and uninspired. But consistency doesn't depend on mood. It demands that you act regardless of how you feel. When you master that, you become free from the limitations of your emotions. Discipline is not punishment, it's freedom. It frees you from laziness, from doubt, from the endless cycle of starting and quitting. When you act with discipline, you take command of your destiny. Progress doesn't announce itself. It grows quietly beneath the surface while you work, unnoticed and unrewarded. Many give up too early because they mistake silence for stagnation. But consistency sees what the eyes cannot, that every step, every effort, every repetition is shaping the unseen foundation of success. When the results finally appear, it's not luck, it's the outcome of persistence that refused to stop. Excitement begins the journey, but routine finishes it. Consistency eventually becomes your nature. What once required effort turns into instinct. You no longer need motivation because action becomes automatic. The mind stops bargaining and the body simply moves. This is where real transformation begins, when doing the work is no longer a choice, but a way of being. The ones who live by consistency don't chase success, they attract it. They understand that greatness is not built in moments of passion, but in the quiet repetition of daily discipline. Each step taken with discipline becomes a force that cannot be shaken. Strength does not come from sudden bursts of effort or short-lived enthusiasm. It is born from the quiet repetition of purposeful action. When you commit to something and continue showing up, even when no one is watching, you begin to build a foundation that no obstacle can destroy. Consistency turns weakness into endurance, hesitation into confidence, and doubt into clarity. Every small effort, when repeated without interruption, carries the power to reshape your life from the inside out. Progress is not found in moments of excitement, but in the long stretches of ordinary days where you choose to keep going. The mind will always seek stimulation and variety, but real growth requires staying rooted in repetition. It is the steady rhythm of effort that transforms chaos into order. You may not see the results immediately, yet with each day of consistency, invisible progress accumulates. The body adapts, the mind sharpens, and what once felt difficult becomes effortless. Consistency builds a kind of strength that motivation alone can never offer. Motivation depends on how you feel, consistency depends on who you decide to be. Every time you act without waiting for inspiration, you strengthen your will. That inner willpower becomes unbreakable with time because it's forged in the fires of repetition and struggle. The more you honor your commitment, the more powerful you become, not because the task gets easier, but because you grow beyond resistance. True progress is never dramatic, it is quiet and persistent. It happens when you do what needs to be done without complaint or delay. Each repetition refines your ability, deepens your focus and expands your endurance. What once required great effort becomes second nature, and that transformation is the real reward of consistency. When you continue without the need for praise or recognition, your work gains purity and your growth becomes inevitable. Every act of consistency adds weight to your inner stability. Over time, that steady effort becomes your unshakable core. Life will test your patience, throw distractions your way, and challenge your commitment, but the one who continues despite all odds becomes immovable. Strength built through consistency does not fade like motivation, it endures, sustains, and multiplies. It is not loud, it is not quick, but it is absolute, the kind of power that nothing outside of you can ever take away. Feelings are the most unreliable guides in life. They shift with the wind, influenced by situations, moods, and the stories the mind keeps creating. One moment you feel unstoppable, the next you are drowning in self-doubt. If your actions depend on how you feel, you will never move steadily toward anything meaningful. Consistency demands that you rise above this instability, that you act not because you feel like it, but because you have committed to something greater than emotion. When you begin to act beyond feeling, your strength stops being fragile and starts becoming real. The mind uses feelings to test your resolve. It tells you to rest when it's time to work, to wait when it's time to move, to quit when you are about to break through. If you listen to these voices, you will always remain a prisoner of comfort. True consistency begins when you stop negotiating with your feelings and start honoring your purpose. The one who learns to act without waiting for inspiration becomes unstoppable because their movement no longer depends on external energy. When you separate yourself from your emotions, clarity returns. You begin to see that feelings are waves. They rise, crash and pass. The ocean beneath, your awareness remains unmoved. Acting from that deeper space gives your life direction, not reaction. You no longer waste time waiting for the right mood or the perfect day. Every day becomes the right day because you have chosen to move no matter what your emotions say. As consistency deepens, feelings lose their power to control you. You start to see them for what they are, temporary fluctuations, not truths. You still feel them, but they no longer dictate your behavior. In this freedom, your energy becomes more focused and your actions become more powerful. The strength of consistency is not in doing something once with passion, but in doing it repeatedly with awareness, even when passion is nowhere to be found. When your actions are no longer dependent on your emotional state, you enter a different level of mastery. You become reliable to yourself. The same energy that once scattered across moods now flows into direction and purpose. Feelings may come and go, but your movement continues without interruption. This is where transformation happens, when you stop obeying emotions and start living from intention. In that space, you no longer chase fleeting motivation, you create momentum that never fades. Discipline is not a cage that limits your freedom, it is the key that unlocks it. When you act beyond emotion, you are no longer controlled by hesitation, excuses, or the constant pull of distraction. The mind will always find reasons to delay, to avoid, to escape the discomfort of effort. Discipline silences that noise. It is not about punishment or denial, it is about mastery. When you command your own mind, you no longer wait for motivation or permission to act. You move because you choose to, and that choice itself becomes your freedom. Laziness loses its grip on those who live with discipline. The moment you decide to act even when the body resists, something inside you strengthens. That inner force begins to replace weakness with endurance. Discipline is not about pushing yourself beyond limits every day. It is about honoring your commitment even when comfort tempts you away. It teaches you to hold your ground when the mind wants to wander. Through repetition, you begin to realize that consistency is power, not the sudden burst of energy, but the steady fire that never goes out. Doubt feeds on inaction and discipline starves it. When you move without questioning, every step uncertainty loses power over you. The act itself becomes the answer. Every time you show up, you prove to yourself that you can rely on your own will. That reliability becomes your confidence. Discipline builds a kind of trust within yourself that no amount of external approval can match. Once you know you can depend on your own word, you stop needing validation from the world. Distraction is the enemy that thrives in an undisciplined mind. It steals your focus by promising easy satisfaction while leaving you empty afterward. Discipline protects your attention. It teaches you to choose what matters over what feels good for a moment. Each time you resist distraction, you reclaim your strength. The mind begins to respect your direction instead of dictating it. This is how discipline transforms into clarity, when your energy flows in one direction, undivided and unstoppable. Discipline is freedom because it breaks the chains of impulse. It allows you to act with purpose rather than reaction. A disciplined mind is calm, focused and unbothered by chaos. It no longer runs from effort, it embraces it as the path to growth. When discipline becomes your nature, life stops feeling like a series of struggles and starts becoming a state of flow. You no longer fight with yourself, you move with awareness, precision and power. That is true freedom, complete command over your own being. Motivation fades because it relies on emotion, and emotion is never stable. The fire that burns today can turn to ash tomorrow. Those who depend on motivation live in cycles of rise and fall, beginning with energy and ending with excuses. Consistency, however, is not a feeling, it is a decision. It does not wait for inspiration, it simply moves. The one who understands this truth no longer looks for external fuel. They act because they have chosen to move, not because they feel like it. That choice becomes strength, and that strength becomes the foundation for all progress. When you commit to something and follow through every single day, you begin to rewrite the patterns of your mind. Consistency trains you to stay steady when others waver. It builds endurance, sharpens focus, and silences doubt. Every small effort compounds, creating invisible progress that only becomes visible with time. The power of consistency lies in its patience. It does not demand quick results, it simply trusts the process and continues. Each repetition deepens your mastery, each day of persistence adds another layer to your strength. Those who rely on motivation often quit when the excitement fades. They search for a new spark, a new push, a new reason to continue. But the consistent one doesn't need a reason. They already decided. The mind may protest, the body may resist, but consistency moves regardless. It is not about perfection, it is about presence. Every day you show up, even imperfectly, you are training yourself to endure. Over time, That endurance becomes a weapon against weakness, a silent force that separates those who dream from those who achieve. Consistency also teaches humility. It shows that true progress is not dramatic or glamorous, it is built quietly in moments of effort no one sees. It strips away the ego that seeks applause and replaces it with discipline that seeks growth. When you stay consistent, you no longer crave recognition because the work itself becomes the reward. You begin to value effort more than outcome, and in doing so, you rise above frustration and comparison. This shift in perspective transforms struggle into strength. When consistency becomes your nature, motivation becomes irrelevant. You move because it has become part of who you are. The mind no longer debates, it simply acts. There is a calm power in such movement, no noise, no excitement, just quiet determination. That steadiness is what builds unshakable people. Life bends before those who keep showing up, no matter the circumstances. The world may applaud motivation, but it bows to consistency because consistency never stops, and that is where greatness is born. Those who wait for the perfect moment to act remain trapped in hesitation. They convince themselves that motivation will arrive like a wave and push them forward, but that wave never comes. Waiting for the right time is a subtle form of procrastination disguised as preparation. Life does not reward those who wait, it rewards those who begin. When you take the first step, even in uncertainty, movement itself gives rise to energy. The act of doing creates its own force, and that force transforms hesitation into momentum. Motivation is a fleeting spark, unreliable and inconsistent. It rises and falls with mood, comfort and external circumstances. Depending on it makes one a prisoner of emotion, moving only when it feels convenient. But those who move without waiting for motivation break the cycle of stagnation. They understand that motion itself breeds clarity, and clarity fuels progress. Each small act of effort builds rhythm, and that rhythm becomes unstoppable over time. Consistency replaces emotion with purpose, and that purpose becomes the anchor when energy fades. When you start even without feeling ready, something shifts inside you. The body adjusts, the mind aligns, and resistance begins to crumble. Every step forward, however small, dissolves the illusion of difficulty. You begin to see that it was not lack of motivation holding you back, but the habit of delay. The moment you act despite discomfort, you reclaim control from hesitation. This is how growth begins, not through inspiration, but through the discipline of doing. The idea of waiting for motivation keeps people stuck in a loop of thought. They plan, dream and imagine, but never move. Action breaks this cycle instantly. Once you begin, momentum carries you further than motivation ever could. Progress is not born from passion but from persistence. The mind that learns to act without waiting becomes unshakable. It no longer negotiates with laziness or fear, it simply moves because that is its nature. Every great transformation begins with the smallest act of courage, the decision to start. You do not need perfect conditions, perfect mood or perfect timing. You need movement. The one who acts without waiting soon discovers that motivation was never the starting point, it was the result. When you move, motivation follows. When you hesitate, it dies. Those who master this truth no longer chase the feeling of motivation, they create it through consistent action, turning every step into power. Every time you make a promise to yourself and fulfill it, something unshakable begins to form within you. You stop being someone who merely hopes for change and become someone who creates it. Each small act of discipline becomes a silent declaration that your word has value, that your intentions are not empty. When you say you will do something and then follow through, you teach your mind that you can be trusted. This inner trust is not built in a single day, It is forged in countless moments where you choose effort over comfort, action over excuses. When you honor your own commitments, the world starts to respond differently. You walk with quiet confidence because you no longer doubt yourself. You no longer need approval or validation because your strength comes from your own consistency. Each fulfilled promise reinforces your sense of integrity, and that integrity becomes your foundation. Even when challenges arise, you no longer crumble easily because your trust in yourself has been tested and proven. It is this unbroken chain of action that makes you resilient. Self-trust is not about arrogance, it is about alignment. When your actions reflect your words, your inner and outer worlds begin to move together. There is no inner conflict, no wasted energy in justifying failure or delay. You begin to act naturally without forcing motivation because your system is trained to move forward. The energy once lost in self-doubt now fuels your focus and clarity. This alignment turns ordinary discipline into a powerful current that carries you toward your goals without struggle. Breaking your own word repeatedly weakens your spirit. Every time you say you will do something and don't, you fracture the bond between your intention and your execution. Eventually, your mind stops believing in your own promises. That is why so many people feel stuck. They have taught themselves to doubt their own strength. Rebuilding this trust requires patience, but every small act of follow-through repairs what was broken. Slowly, your actions start matching your words again, and from that alignment, a new power emerges. When you no longer betray your own word, you no longer live in conflict with yourself. You move with certainty, not because you know the future, but because you know you will face it fully. This is the essence of real strength, not in grand gestures or bursts of motivation, but in the quiet, consistent honoring of your own truth. When you trust yourself completely, the need for outside validation disappears and your life becomes guided by inner clarity rather than external noise. Progress never announces itself. It builds in silence, far away from applause or recognition. In the beginning, it feels as if nothing is moving, as if your effort is being swallowed by emptiness. But beneath that stillness, something powerful is forming. Every small act, every repeated attempt, and every unnoticed effort is laying bricks in the unseen architecture of your strength. Growth does not rush, it deepens. And those who stay through the silent phases are the ones who one day awaken to find themselves transformed. When you commit to a path, you will face moments when the results seem invisible. The world may not see your effort, and even you may begin to question your own progress. But true change is not measured by what can be seen, it is measured by what has shifted within. The unseen discipline, the quiet endurance, the choice to continue when the mind wants to stop, this is where the foundation of greatness is formed. Those who abandon the journey too early never realize how close they were to a breakthrough that was already unfolding beneath the surface. There is a certain humility required to continue when no one notices. You must learn to walk without applause, to move forward without reassurance. The ego craves recognition, but real progress thrives in silence. Every day you show up, you prove to yourself that you are not working for validation, but for evolution. You are not chasing attention, you are becoming stronger, steadier, more capable of carrying the weight of your own purpose. In that quiet space, the real work of transformation happens. The most profound shifts occur in the moments when it feels like nothing is changing. That is when your roots are digging deeper, anchoring you for what is to come. If growth were always visible, everyone would endure. But it is precisely because it is invisible that it demands faith. You cannot see the seed breaking open beneath the soil, yet without that, unseen process, there would be no tree. The same truth applies to you. What you cannot yet see is what will one day hold your entire life together. Every day that passes without visible results is not a wasted day. It is an essential one. It is the quiet preparation that makes future strength possible. Progress is invisible not because it is absent, but because it is internal. The mind, the spirit, the will, all of them are being forged in the fire of patience. The ones who learn to trust this unseen phase never lose their way. They understand that the silence before the bloom is not failure, it is formation. Excitement is the spark that ignites movement, but it burns out quickly if not supported by discipline. In the beginning, everything feels alive, ideas are bright, emotions are high, and possibilities seem endless. But that rush fades, as it always does. The ones who depend on excitement soon collapse under their own inconsistency. What remains after the thrill is gone decides everything. The true journey begins when the noise of motivation ends, and all that is left is you and your willingness to continue. Discipline is what carries the dream forward when the heart no longer races. It is the quiet force that takes you from inspiration to realization. Those who understand this truth stop chasing emotional highs and start creating stable rhythms. The mind may crave intensity, but growth happens in repetition. Every small act done daily, even when it feels dull, is far more powerful than a burst of passion that fades overnight. The steady walker always outlasts the runner who stops to rest. There will be days when the path feels dry, when everything within you screams to pause, when progress seems invisible. That is where consistency shows its power. The body might resist, the mind might complain, but the spirit that has chosen steadiness will always rise. You cannot depend on moods to shape your destiny. Moods change, weather changes, but purpose must remain unshaken. When you act not because you feel like it, but because it must be done, you move from emotion to mastery. Excitement can only push you forward for a short while. Consistency builds a bridge that carries you for life. People often mistake motivation for strength, but true strength is found in the quiet repetition of effort, day after day. It is built in the unseen hours, when no one is watching and no one is clapping. That is where character is formed, not in moments of enthusiasm, but in moments of decision. Every repetition of effort engraves discipline deeper into your being until it becomes your natural way of living. When excitement fades, most people stop believing the energy is gone. But those who understand the deeper current know that the real work starts then. Life tests how much you can continue without external fuel. The truth is simple, anyone can start, few can sustain. Excitement begins the story, but consistency writes its ending. The dream does not belong to those who begin with fire, it belongs to those who keep walking when the fire has turned to ash. When you repeat an action long enough, it begins to shape your very nature. The body adjusts, the mind aligns, and the spirit accepts it as truth. What was once effort slowly turns into rhythm. In the beginning, every action feels like a mountain, every step a struggle, but repetition dissolves resistance. You stop questioning the process and start becoming the process. The discipline that once felt forced begins to flow naturally, and what once demanded effort now becomes your second nature. Consistency changes the structure of the mind. Each act repeated with awareness builds a pattern that strengthens your inner foundation. You start operating from a deeper level of awareness rather than impulse. The more consistent you are, the less you depend on external motivation because the energy comes from within. When something becomes part of you, it no longer drains your strength, it fuels it. Repetition becomes meditation, action becomes alignment. There is a moment when consistency no longer feels like work, it transforms into identity. You no longer say, I must do this, because you have become the kind of person who simply does. That is the real power of habit. It rewires you. You are no longer fighting with your thoughts, you are guided by your rhythm. The noise of doubt fades because you are no longer negotiating with yourself. The action that once required effort now flows through you effortlessly. In this state, results stop being the focus. You no longer act to achieve something, you act because it is who you are. Every movement, every repetition, every small act is a reflection of the discipline that now lives within you. You begin to see how life rewards steadiness over intensity. Where others get exhausted by their own inconsistency, you move quietly but steadily toward mastery. This is how consistency transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary power. When effort becomes your nature, you are no longer chasing success, you are living it. There is no longer a gap between who you are and what you do. Each day becomes a continuation of your essence, not a struggle to prove something. The one who repeats, refines, and remains grounded eventually surpasses the one who only dreams. True strength is not in doing great things once, it is in doing small things so often that greatness becomes unavoidable. Motivation is a wave, but consistency is the ocean. Waves rise and fall, but the ocean remains calm, vast and powerful. You don't need to feel ready to move, you only need to begin. The one who acts daily without waiting for the perfect mood becomes unstoppable. Stop chasing motivation and start building consistency. Because when you master consistency, success no longer depends on how you feel, it becomes the natural rhythm of your life.